Underestimation leads to downfall. Ah, what a delicious little truth people keep ignoring, like a warning label they think only applies to everyone else. It's funny, isn't it? How people walk around believing they've got the whole world figured out, believing they can size you up with a glance, a smirk, a whisper they tell themselves so they feel taller. They look at you, measure you by whatever flickers on the surface, your silence, your scars, your calm, and they decide they've already won. They convince themselves you're predictable, harmless, manageable. They write your story before you've even opened your mouth. And that, right there, is the first step toward their downfall. Because underestimation is a quiet poison. It doesn't scream. It doesn't bite. It just waits. It waits in the shadows of someone's arrogance, in the corners of their confidence, in that little gap between what they think they know and what they never bothered to learn. People become so sure of their own strength that they forget strength has layers. Depth history. They forget every person is a ticking clock of choices, pain, experience, and fire. And when someone mistakes that fire for a flicker, oh, how fast that flicker turns into an explosion the moment they push too far. You see, the funniest thing about someone who underestimates you is that they think they're safe. They think they're in control. They think the fight is already theirs. They fool themselves into believing the outcome is written in stone simply because they can't imagine a world where they're wrong. And when you step into the ring with someone like that, someone who's already decided you're beneath them, the universe smiles, because that's when reality gets to play its favorite trick, flipping the script. There's a certain kind of satisfaction in watching the confidence drain from a person's face when they realize they've miscalculated, when they feel that first hit, not just the physical one, but the emotional punch, the shock, the disbelief. That moment when their eyes widen ever so slightly, not because they're hurt, but because they've just seen something they never expected. You. The real you. The you they didn't prepare for. The you they never imagined they'd have to deal with. People think power is loud, but real power, it's quiet, silent, hidden behind a smirk, a stare, a breath you don't waste explaining yourself. And when someone underestimates that kind of power, they sign their own fate. They swing wild, thinking they've already won. They drop their guard, believing you're too weak, too slow, too small. They step forward with their chest out, ready to show the world how easily they can break you. And that's when the universe hands you the perfect moment to strike. Not because you need to prove anything. Not because you crave the applause. But because you've been forged by battles they've never seen. You've taken hits they couldn't survive. You've been through storms they wouldn't last a minute in. And all that quiet strength, all that buried fire, all that experience they failed to see becomes the force that knocks them backwards, leaves them breathless, spins their world off its axis. That's the cost of underestimation. Not just losing, but being stunned by the realization that the person they thought was small was never small at all. The person they thought was weak was simply patient. The person they thought they could walk over ended up being the one who tripped them, flipped them, and shattered their illusion in a single moment of impact. And the best part, it was their own arrogance that made it possible. The ring exposes truth, that beautiful little stage where masks fall faster than punches land. People love to pretend out there in the world. Pretend they're strong, pretend they're fearless, pretend they've got everything under control. But the moment they step into that tight, unforgiving square, every lie they've been carrying starts to tremble. The ring doesn't care about your stories, your excuses, your polished little image. The ring only cares about what's real, and nothing reveals the truth faster than the sound of your own heartbeat when you realize there's no more hiding, no more talking, no more pretending. Just you, your instincts, and whatever you've been avoiding all your life. It's funny, really. Out there, people walk around like performers on a stage, each of them decorated with their own little fantasies about who they are. But when they step into the ring, the lights shift. Suddenly the spotlight gets a little too bright, the silence gets a little too heavy, and the truth they've been avoiding starts whispering in their ear. You can almost see it happen. The moment when the bravado cracks, when the swagger dissolves, when the smirk begins to melt off their face. Because the ring has this delightful way of peeling people open, layer by layer, until all that's left is the raw, unfiltered version of themselves they hoped no one would ever see. Punches don't expose people, pressure does. And the ring is nothing but pressure. The kind that squeezes out every insecurity, every fear, every secret weakness a person tried to bury. When you're out there with no escape hatch, no place to run, and someone in front of you who isn't fooled by your act, truth comes pouring out whether you're ready or not. Some try to fight it. Some try to cling to their illusions. But the ring doesn't negotiate. It demands honesty, and it gets it one way or another. You can always tell who's been living in reality and who's been living in a fantasy. The ones who've been pretending start to unravel fast. Their movements get sloppy. Their breaths get shaky. Their eyes start darting around, looking for something, anything, that'll save them from the truth closing in. They swing wild, desperate, like they're fighting a ghost that's been chasing them for years. But the ones who faced themselves before, the ones who know their own darkness, their own strength, their own flaws, they move different. They're grounded, present, dangerous in a quiet, unsettling way, because the ring doesn't just expose weakness. It exposes preparation, discipline, history. It shows who came to fight and who came to fantasize, and when someone realizes that their opponent isn't the version they imagined, but something sharper, stronger, more aware, the truth hits them harder than any punch could. It's that moment of recognition, that spark of, oh no, this is real, that spreads across their face. And nothing is more honest than that expression right there. Out there in the world, people can talk their way out of anything. They can bluff, brag, hide behind words and distractions. But in the ring, words lose their power. There's no sweet talking your way past a fist aimed at your jaw. No pretending you're confident when your knees are giving out. No disguising your fear when the bell rings and you realize you're locked in with someone who sees right through you. The ring is the great truth teller, the place where every lie goes to die. And the best part, the truth always shows itself in the most dramatic fashion. Sometimes it's a stumble, sometimes it's a flinch. Sometimes it's that pathetic little moment where someone tries to convince themselves they still have a chance, when even their body knows they don't. But every time, the ring strips them bare, exposes who they really are, and leaves the truth echoing louder than any cheer or gasp from the crowd. Because inside that square, there's nowhere for illusions to hide. Masks shatter under pressure, and isn't that the most delightful part of all? Everyone walks around wearing one, some shiny, some cracked, some painted with these big, bold smiles that look just a little too perfect. But pressure, real pressure, the kind that tightens around your ribs and squeezes the breath right out of your lungs, that's what makes every mask start to splinter. You can almost hear it happen, like tiny little cracks forming in a porcelain face. People think they can hold it together forever, but the moment the world leans a little too hard on them, the mask trembles, slips, and oh, does the truth beneath it look different from what they wanted you to believe? Out there, people cling to their masks like their lifelines. They dress them up with confidence, humor, charm, whatever costume keeps them safe from being seen. They build entire identities made of cardboard and glue, fragile enough to crumble at the slightest shake, but bold enough to fool the crowd. And they love those masks. They polish them every morning, rehearse the expressions, repeat the lines, make sure the illusion is perfect before they step into the world. Because pretending is easier than admitting what's underneath. But pressure doesn't care about their effort. Pressure walks up, knocks twice, and then tears everything open without even asking. And the ring, oh, the ring is pressure's favorite playground. Step in there, and suddenly the mask starts sweating. The smile feels heavy. The eyes start darting. All that confidence, all that swagger, all that carefully crafted performance begins to melt like cheap makeup under hot lights. You watch a person's face morph from rehearsed certainty to pure, unfiltered panic, and that's when you know their mask wasn't built to survive reality. It was built to survive attention, and attention never hits as hard as pressure. You can tell the exact moment the mask cracks. There's this twitch in the jaw, this flicker in the eyes, this tiny gasp that escapes their throat when they realize they're out of tricks. They try to adjust it, to keep it on, to act like nothing's wrong. But pressure doesn't stop. It leans in closer, whispers in their ear, reminds them that the truth is right there beneath the surface, waiting to pop out like a monster from a closet. And the harder they try to hold that mask in place, the faster it breaks apart. It's always poetic watching someone struggle with their own facade. They came in thinking they could perform their way through the moment, throw a joke, flaunt some confidence, hide behind that shiny expression they've been practicing for years. But the second they feel genuinely outmatched, their mask becomes a burden, an anchor, a suffocating little lie pressed against their skin. Pressure forces them to choose drop the act or let it crush them from the inside. And most people, they crumble before they ever choose. Because masks are built for comfort, not combat. They're made to protect, not endure. Once the punches start flying, literal or otherwise, the mask becomes useless. It can't block the hits. It can't hide the fear. It can't stop the truth from leaking out of the cracks. You see their real eyes, their real breath, their real fear. The face they didn't want the world to see but couldn't control once pressure wrapped its fingers around their throat and squeezed. And humans fear being seen more than they fear losing. They fear exposure more than pain. They fear that someone might look at the truest version of them and decide it's not enough. That's why they cling to those masks with such desperation. But pressure doesn't negotiate, doesn't sympathize, doesn't wait. It simply forced the truth to come crawling out, trembling, wild-eyed, unprepared. And once that mask shatters, it never fits the same way again. Reality hits harder than words, and isn't that the punchline people never see coming? They walk around thinking their sharp tongues and loud mouths will protect them, as if noise could stop a fist, as if bragging could soften a blow. They build these little worlds made of sentences and ego, believing that if they talk enough, shout enough, convince themselves enough, reality will politely step aside. But reality, oh, reality is rude. It doesn't wait its turn. It doesn't clap for your speeches. It doesn't care about the narratives you rehearsed in the mirror. Reality just kicks the door down and swings with everything it's got. Words are easy. Anyone can throw them around. Anyone can puff up their chest and declare themselves a champion, a fighter, a force to be reckoned with. But the moment reality walks in, all those pretty little sentences turn to dust. Because reality is weight. Reality is truth. Reality is impact. It lands right in the center of your chest, knocks the air out of your lungs, and forces you to reconsider everything you thought you knew about yourself. And the most delicious part? It always arrives at the worst possible moment. Right when someone thinks they've won. Right when they think they've got everything under control. That's when reality curls its fist and reminds them just how small their words really were. Out in the world, people hide behind language like it's armor. They believe the right insult makes them untouchable. The right speech makes them powerful. The right tone gives them authority. But step into the ring, literal or metaphorical, and reality strips all that away. You can't talk your way out of a hit. You can't charm your way out of pressure. You can't sweet-talk gravity or negotiate momentum. In the ring, every word you ever threw means nothing. Only your preparation matters. Your resilience, your instinct. The truth of who you are when everything else collapses. And that's what makes reality such a wonderful teacher. It doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't pretend. It shows you exactly what you are in the moment you're forced to stand alone. When someone who's been running their mouth finally takes a real hit, you can see it. The shock spreading across their face as they realize the world isn't playing along with their script. Their voice cracks. Their breath stutters. Their eyes widen. Because reality doesn't just strike the body, it strikes the ego. And the ego always falls harder. There's something almost artistic about the collision between expectation and truth. Someone walks in believing they're invincible, unbeatable, unstoppable. They think their words built some kind of shield around them. But reality doesn't even slow down. It slices through their excuses, their bravado, their fantasies. It exposes every weakness they tried to bury under big talk. And when that impact lands, there's a moment, just a split second, where their whole world goes quiet. That's the sound of ego breaking. That's the sound of imagination losing to truth. And the funniest part, reality doesn't even apologize. It doesn't feel bad for embarrassing someone. It doesn't wait for them to recover. It hits, and then it keeps hitting until the lies fall away. Some people crumble instantly. Others fight back, fueled not by words, but by something deeper, something real. Those are the ones who learned long ago that words are just decorations. Pretty, empty decorations. Reality only respects effort, discipline, scars, and persistence. People who rely on words alone always fall the hardest, because the moment reality challenges them, they realize they've brought a paper shield to a gunfight. They try to talk, to argue, to explain, but reality doesn't listen. It only responds to action, to grit, to truth. And when the dust settles, all that remains is the version of themselves they never planned to reveal. The one stripped of excuses, stripped of lies, stripped of noise. And that version is the only one reality ever wanted to meet. Strength comes from unseen battles, the ones nobody claps for, nobody notices, nobody even suspects you've fought. People look at someone standing tall and think the strength is in the posture, the grin, the timing of the punch. But real strength, that comes from the nights you didn't sleep, the days you dragged yourself through hell with a smile, the moments you broke in silence because the world wasn't watching. Everyone sees the outcome. No one sees the war behind your eyes, the bruises you learned to hide, the storms you kept quiet, the victories no one applauded because no one even knew they happened. It's always amusing how people think strength appears out of thin air, like it's some magical gift that drops into your lap. They never imagine that strength is stitched together from every scar you've collected over the years. Every heartbreak sharpened you. Every betrayal hardened you. Every failure carved something into your bones. And every time you stood back up when you didn't want to, when everything inside you screamed to stay down, that's when the real strength grew. Not during the big moments, the public scenes, the flashy confrontations, but in the shadows, where the only witness was your own reflection staring back at you with tired eyes and clenched teeth. People love to judge based on what they see on the surface. They see you walk into a room with confidence and assume you were born that way. They see you take a hit without flinching and think you're naturally fearless. They see you rise after getting knocked down and imagine you have some supernatural resilience. But they never stop to wonder what it took to become that person. They don't realize that strength is a long, ugly process. It's built from shattered expectations, buried disappointments, quiet rebuilding. You take pain, twist it, break it apart, forge it into something useful. And while everyone else is sleeping peacefully, you're in your own private ring, swinging at your demons until the sun comes up. And that's the thing about unseen battles. They're not glamorous. They don't come with music or dramatic lighting. They hurt. They drain you. They force you to face the parts of yourself you'd rather pretend don't exist. You confront your anger, your fear, your guilt, your doubt. You fail over and over until failure loses its edge. You get knocked flat by life and realize nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is handing you strength. You either build it yourself or you stay broken. And once you understand that, something inside you shifts. You stop relying on others to validate your fight. You start embracing the grind, the silence, the discomfort. The people who underestimate you. They don't know the battles you've survived. They have no idea what you had to endure. They don't see the days you walked through fire while pretending everything was fine. They don't know how many times you stared at the ceiling asking yourself if you had anything left. They don't understand that you didn't get strong because you wanted to. You got strong because you had no choice. Life cornered you, pushed you, twisted your arm behind your back until you had to learn how to hit back. And now that strength lives in your bones, quiet and dangerous, what makes unseen battles so powerful is that they sharpen your instincts. When you've survived enough inner wars, nothing surprises you anymore. Nothing breaks you the same way. You learn to read people, you learn to sense danger, you learn to spot lies, masks, illusions. You move differently, not because you're showing off, but because you've been through enough darkness to walk with certainty in the light. And that certainty unsettles people who've never been tested. They see the calm in your eyes, and they mistake it for arrogance. They don't realize it's the calm of someone who's already fought the worst parts of themselves and lived to tell the tale. Strength born in silence isn't loud. It doesn't boast. It doesn't seek attention. It just waits steady and unshaken, ready for whatever challenge steps into the ring next. Impact defines the fighter, not the talk, not the swagger, not the polished little story someone rehearses to make themselves seem bigger than they are. Impact is the only language the world really understands. It's the moment where everything slows down, everything sharpens, and who you are becomes painfully clear. Because when the hit lands, physically, mentally, emotionally, that's when the truth steps forward. Impact doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't pretend you're stronger or weaker than you are. It exposes you in a split second, strips you down to your most authentic form, and nothing reveals a fighter faster than that one unmistakable moment where force meets flesh and ego meets reality. People walk around convinced their identity is built from their words. They talk big, they posture, they perform, hoping their noise will create an illusion strong enough to hold. But when the impact comes, when life swings with all its weight, that's when the mask drops and the performance collapses. A real fighter is defined not by how loud they are, but by how they absorb that moment, how they respond when everything hits them at once. Some crumble before the echo even fades. Others smile through the blood, wipe the dust off their knuckles, and step forward like the impact was just an introduction. Every fighter has a story, sure, but the story is written in their reactions, not their speeches. It's in the way they brace themselves before the blow, the way they tighten their jaw, the way they breathe, the way they refuse to look away, even when the hit is coming straight for them. That willingness to face the collision instead of avoiding it. That's what separates someone pretending to be strong from someone who truly is. Impact is the great clarification of character. It doesn't care about potential or excuses. It reveals what's already there. You can always tell who's been living a comfortable lie. They panic when they're hit. Their eyes go wide. Their body folds. The shock wipes out their confidence like a wave wiping chalk off a sidewalk. Because they built their identity on the idea of strength, not the experience of it. But someone who's familiar with impact, someone who's been hit before, by life, by loss, by failure, by disappointment, they respond differently. They exhale instead of panic. They adjust instead of collapse. They don't run because they've learned that running doesn't stop the hit. It only delays the lesson. Impact is a teacher far more honest than society. Society hands out trophies for appearances. Impact hands out truth in the form of bruises and clarity. It tells you where you stand. It tells you what you need to fix. It tells you whether all your talk means anything when the world stops listening. And the wild thing, some people try to avoid this lesson forever. They talk, distract, deflect, hoping impact won't find them. But it always does. It arrives like a knock on the door you hoped was a joke. And when you open it, everything you pretended not to fear stands on the other side. A fighter isn't defined by how many hits they throw. Anyone can swing. Anyone can lash out. But not everyone can take the aftermath. The ringing in the ears, the sting in the muscles, the shock running through the body. Impact challenges the foundation of who you are, and the ones who survive it with their spirit intact. Those are the ones who earn the word fighter without ever having to say it out loud. Their presence says enough. Their scars say enough. Their calm under pressure says enough. And something else. Impact shapes memory. People remember the moment they were hit harder than they expected. They remember the moment they landed a strike that changed everything. Those moments become landmarks in their identity. Points on the map of who they've become. A fighter is carved from these moments, sculpted by every collision, every confrontation, every shock that forced them to evolve. Impact doesn't just define the fighter. It creates them.